Hello and welcome to the H2Tronics Tech Support video series. This segment will demonstrate the correct wiring for the Little Dipper 2 fluorometer from Turner Designs, and we're going to connect to a Wacom WebMaster controller. We're going to use the optional analog input card inside the controller, and there'll be a few tools that you need to perform this task. You'll need a small screwdriver. The terminal blocks inside the WebMaster are very small, so a nice small screwdriver would be helpful. A small pair of channel locks to adjust and tighten the cord grip on the bottom of the WebMaster. A multimeter for an alternative method to check for your signal from the Little Dipper. And a computer, laptop, along with a USB or Ethernet cable in order to log onto the controller and finish the setup for the sensor. The documentation for the wiring connections is available in the Little Dipper 2 manual. It shows a 4-wire connection for the Little Dipper 2, 2 wires being power supply for the sensor and 2 wires being signal back to a controller or monitor. Also in the WebMaster 1 manual, there is a wiring diagram showing several examples of analog devices hooked to the optional analog input card. And finally, also in the WebMaster 1 manual, there's a diagram for a 4-wire transmitter. The Little Dipper 2 is a 4-wire transmitter, so we'll be making connections according to that diagram. From the Little Dipper 2 sensor, we want to route the cable through one of the bottom cable glands on the WebMaster. Route that cable in, and ultimately we're going to connect to the analog input card in the center of this board. You'll notice the red wire is connected to a plus 24 volt terminal on the analog card. The black wire and the brown wire are both connected to analog DC common on that same terminal block. And our signal wire, the orange wire from the Little Dipper 2, will connect to the analog input minus terminal for analog input number 1 in this case. There are 2 ways to check the signal from the Little Dipper 2. Make sure our wiring connections are correct. What you see here is a multimeter connected in series with the orange signal wire. That loop continues right through the meter and goes into the analog input minus terminal. So that meter is completely in series with the 4 to 20 loop, and it gives us a check on the current coming back from the sensor to verify that we have the right connection. The other method to check for a valid signal from the Little Dipper 2 is to log on to the WebMaster 1 controller with your laptop. This can be done with a USB cable or an Ethernet cable, and the actual procedure to make that connection is covered in the WebMaster 1 manual. The first page, once you're connected, that you will see is your login page, and the default username is WebMaster, and the default password is 2001, and make sure we select the Submit Details button. And that will bring you to the System Summary page. A quick check on the System Summary page will show you what analog inputs you have connected and or configured for the controller, and you'll see those down here in the middle of the System Summary page. To check the 4 to 20 input that we use to connect the Little Dipper, we use the left-hand side menus and we select the 4 to 20 milliamp input menus. That page will display at the top all 8 analog input channels. In this demonstration, we have 2 channels in use, input number 1 and input number 2. Input number 1, you will see here, is selected as generic. That's the setting we'll use for the Little Dipper 2. And as you can see here, input number 1 shows a present milliamp reading of 4.28. And since this is a 4 to 20 milliamp signal, this determines that it's a valid signal coming from the Little Dipper 2. There's no sample in front of the sensor, so it'll be reading the minimum reading. The last part of the setup will be to span the instrument, and from there we go to the left-hand side menus and select generic. And here we're able to do several things for analog input number 1. We can provide a custom name, and you'll see here it says Little Dipper. It'll show the present value based on the span settings. Here's our present milliamp reading, which is 4.28. And these fields over here are the actual span values that we enter for the Little Dipper 2. 4 milliamps will be set at 0 parts per billion. 20 milliamps will be set at 200 parts per billion, which is the factory calibration for the Little Dipper 2. Once those correct values are entered in these fields, we can enter the units, which in this case would be parts per billion, and we drop down and make sure we select the Submit Details button. Once we have submitted those details, this particular analog input has been configured and the Little Dipper 2 is ready for operation. Thank you for watching our H2Tronics Tech Support video series. Check us out at h2tronics.com for additional videos.